They say power reveals a man's character, but sometimes it takes a loaded gun pressed against your skull to reveal who really holds the power. And let me tell you something, it ain't always the one wearing the badge. That night in Birchwood, Alabama was thick with summer sweat and silence. You could hear the cicadas scream and the occasional bark of a dog, but other than that, the town was sleeping. All except for one man, driving home in a 1998 Cadillac DeVille, a relic from another time, polished chrome, tan leather, and a soul soaked in memory. That man was Reuben Miles, 68 years old, war veteran, and federal judge. Not that Officer Kyle Denton cared about any of that. To him, Reuben was just another black man out too late, driving a car too nice, too old, too proud. The red and blue lights lit up the empty road like fireworks on the 4th of July, except there was no celebration in what came next. Denton didn't approach with courtesy, didn't ask for license or registration, didn't even start with a question. He came with a flashlight in the eyes, a hand on his gun, and a tone like vinegar. "What are you doing here?" Now, before we go further, let me back up a sec. Because to understand why Reuben Miles didn't panic, didn't scream, didn't flinch, you gotta understand the fire he came through. Reuben wasn't born with power. He earned it. He grew up in a shotgun house on the outskirts of Lafayette County. Dirt floors, mama cleaning motels. At 16, he enlisted. Army Ranger. Did 3 tours in Vietnam, 1 in Panama. And during those years, he didn't just learn how to survive. He learned discipline, the kind that gets carved into your bones when you're marching 30 miles in the jungle with blisters on your feet and death in the trees. Reuben learned how to command a room, not by shouting, but by standing still and letting the weight of his presence do the talking. When he got back, he put himself through law school with GI Bill pennies, slept in his car some nights, skipped meals others. And when the world told him he didn't belong in courtrooms with mahogany walls and powdered wigs, he proved them wrong with every ruling, every footnote, every late-night briefing. He didn't just become a judge, he became a symbol, a reminder that a black man with history in his blood and iron in his spine could rise, even if the world wasn't ready to watch. But none of that mattered to Denton. That night, on that empty stretch of Birchwood State Route 9, none of it shielded Reuben from the prejudice curling inside a man too young to understand consequence. "You got ID or you just borrowing this ride from your dealer uncle?" That's what Denton said. And Reuben just breathed, calmly. "My license is in the glove box," he replied. "You may reach for it if you're concerned." But Denton didn't want paperwork. He wanted dominance. Within seconds, he was yanking Reuben from the car, slamming him onto the hood. Hands on the metal, legs spread. "Don't get smart." No reason, no warrant, just rage, unearned, unprovoked, and unjustified. Reuben didn't fight, didn't plead, but when that Glock came out and pressed against his skull, and Denton growled, "I'm the law out here, you hear me?" That's when the storm inside Reuben shifted. His voice didn't shake, it didn't rise. It just cut through the night like a clean blade. "Officer Denton, badge 7419. I suggest you lower your weapon and call your supervisor immediately." That badge number. It startled Denton. He hadn't said it. But Reuben, in that split second before things spiraled, had already clocked it. It was muscle memory. And then Reuben said it. Not loud, not boastful, just factual. "I am Judge Reuben Miles, federal appointment, 11th Circuit Court. You're in violation of 3 constitutional amendments, and if you don't back down now, you'll spend the next 20 years learning law from the wrong side of a courtroom." There was silence. Heavy, sharp. Denton hesitated, lips twitching, then scoffed, called it a bluff. "Yeah, call your damn lawyer. Let's see if he picks up." And so Reuben did. Not just a call, the call, to a number only 12 people in the country knew. A 24/7 judicial emergency line routed through the U.S. Marshals. The phone rang once. "This is Priority Line Delta. Please identify." Reuben said it plain. "Judge Reuben Miles, in custody. Immediate extraction requested. Birchwood, Alabama. Highway 9. Code Alpha Echo 11. Top threat. Judicial status compromised." Denton's face drained. He reached for the phone, pressed it to his ear. The voice on the other end confirmed. A rapid response team from Montgomery was already en route. 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's all it took for Denton's world to collapse. Because by the time those black SUVs came tearing through the road like judgment on wheels, Denton was shaking like a branch in a storm. They disarmed him, cuffed him, Mirandized him right there on the spot. And Reuben, he didn't gloat, didn't yell, he just rubbed the red marks on his wrists and exhaled. But the story didn't end there. Oh no. Because what happened next tore the town of Birchwood apart. Within hours, the dash cam footage leaked. Not all of it, but enough. The press picked it up like wildfire. Black federal judge held at gunpoint by Birchwood cop. Is this what justice looks like in the South? CNN, MSNBC, even Fox showed up. Some anchors called it deeply troubling. Others? Another liberal setup. The sheriff? Silent. The mayor? Issued a half-hearted statement about reviewing protocols. But the people, they spoke loudest. Thousands gathered outside City Hall, holding signs, candles, photographs. Some chanted Reuben's name, others, Denton's resignation. And then came the hearings. Internal affairs, DOJ, local lawyers, federal reps, body cam analysts, a media frenzy, and in the middle of it all, Reuben sat silent, not out of fear, but out of deliberation. Because here's the twist. He had a choice. Prosecute Denton, press charges that would land him in federal prison, destroy his future, maybe his life, or let the system punish him through review, demotion, humiliation, without pulling the trigger of the law. And for the first time in a long time, Reuben hesitated. He remembered war. He remembered injustice. But he also remembered a young man, a hothead maybe, with no guidance, no elders, no compass. He saw a country boiling with rage and no one listening. In a closed-room discussion with DOJ officials, Reuben finally spoke. I'm not looking for vengeance. I'm looking for change. If my blood has to be spilled on the road for this town to wake up, then don't wipe it away. Highlight it. But that didn't mean Denton walked free. He was stripped of his badge, tried for abuse of power, fined, banned from law enforcement, and forced to issue a public apology in front of cameras to the man he humiliated. But that apology? Yeah, it came with more than words. Because behind Denton stood Officer Isaac Ramirez, a quiet Latino officer who had seen the whole thing that night. And after days of silence, he spoke. He testified in Reuben's favor, exposed years of good old boy corruption in the Birchwood PD. And for that, he received death threats, lost friends, was put on unpaid leave. Reuben visited him personally, shook his hand, and said, "You stood up when it mattered. You remind me of the soldier I used to be." Ramirez smiled and said, "You remind me of the man I want to become." In the weeks after, Reuben's face was everywhere. Interviews, news panels, podcasts. Some called him a hero, others, an instigator. He received letters from children and threats from cowards. One morning his granddaughter asked him, "Grandpa, are you scared?" And he said, "Sweetheart, fear ain't new to me, but silence. Silence is the one thing I won't wear anymore." The Federal Oversight Committee assigned to Birchwood PD rewrote their hiring protocols, mandated bias training, and implemented full body cam transparency. The sheriff resigned. A new one was elected, a black woman named Bernice Jordan, first in town history. And on the one-year anniversary of that night, Reuben stood on the same road where it all happened, surrounded by townsfolk, press, activists, and old veterans. He touched the hood of his old Cadillac, smiled faintly, then looked to the crowd and said, "This ain't about me. It's about what happens when we mistake the uniform for the authority and forget that we, the people, are the ones who grant it." The applause thundered, but so did the debate, because some still said Denton should have gone to prison. Others believed Reuben was too soft, and some, well, they questioned everything about the story, said it was all too perfect, too political, too convenient. But truth? Truth don't need to be convenient. It just needs to be told. So let me ask you, if Reuben hadn't been a judge, if he'd been just a plumber, would he still be here today to tell his side? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Reuben have forgiven or prosecuted? Was justice served or compromised? If this story hit you, like it, share it, and make sure you're subscribed. Because this is where power meets truth. and we're just getting started.